Welcome back to the office of Captain Harold DeMarrero for River Stories, Volume 27. We last left the captain. He was in Chicago. He's buying a boat off Bill Brooks for $250,000. But unbeknownst to Cap, it was only worth $125,000. But he was gleefully headed back to Houston, Texas, to take helm of the Vonnie D. So take it away, Cap.
Well, I thought I was a rich man. You know, I had a $250,000 boat. I had a beautiful home. I had everything, you know, Corvette, everything. I was happy. And so I got back on the boat. I used to work, I would spend most of my time on the boat because that's where my business was that boat. And so I would go on there and work 45, 50, 60 days, come home for 10 or 15 days, and because that's about all I would trust the crew that I left on there. I should have trusted them more. They did a wonderful job for me. But I kept operating the boat and running over to Birmingport. And I discovered one thing that, and my crew was always at me, that when we got to Birmingport, the boat sometimes would sit there 5 days. If we got there on a Friday, they didn't work Friday, Saturday, so they would start on Monday, and it took them 3 days to unload the barge. So we'd be there 5 days, out in the middle of nowhere. You know, this is 30, 35 miles from Birmingham, and out on the river that it was actually the end of the line on Mulberry Fork of the Warrior River. And because right above this dock, there was a cable ferry so you couldn't go any further. So I was in the last dock up. The only other dock was a Gulf Oil dock that was down about a half a mile down the river. And that was it for Birmingport. So pretty boring to sit there for 5 days, you know. So I went out and bought an old car. I found an old 52, 53 Ford, and bought it, got tags for it, you know, everything, got it all in my name and everything. Actually, I got it in my company's name, Gulfstream Towing Company, this big boat owning company that I owned. And so
So now you're the proud owner of an overpriced boat and a 15-year-old car.
Right. I wasn't 15 years old, but it was pretty old. It was, you know, and it wasn't all that nice, but I didn't mind. It gave me transportation to go back and forth into town for 5 days. And, you know, I found a couple of clubs I liked and hung out at some of them, you know, and the crew, they all liked going into town.
Find some place to play the piano?
No, I wasn't playing the piano back then at those places. I was just drinking and looking at the girls, you know, and, you know, some place to be away and do some stuff, because I was stuck there. So anyway, we bought that old car. We'd come back to Houston. 15 days later, we was back in Birmingport, and then the car wouldn't start. So, you know, the crew didn't mind, though. They were going to go to town, getting out and pushing me down the road till it started, you know. Everybody jump in and off we went.
The joy of owning a standard transmission.
Oh yeah, definitely. You know what it would have been if it hadn't have been. So anyway, I continued to operate the boat, but the boat wasn't getting any better. You know, I wasn't making any money. My accountant says, "You're losing money." I went back to Brooks and I told him, you know, I says, you know, I need more money. Well, of course, not only was Brooks paying me a pathetic salary for this boat, I think it was like $400 a day for the entire boat, and I had to pay all the crew and all the fuel and everything that was purchased for that out of that, you know. So there wasn't enough left at the end of the month. So, and on top of that, Brooks had me, from the beginning, I've had to pay for his cook's or his housekeeper at his house. I'm paying like $300-400 a month back to Bill Brooks for that. You know, and kickback, I guess, what you'd call it today. But you know, he still had me like that. You know, and he was the guy that had the contract with Sinclair. If I had that contract with Sinclair by myself, I would still be owner, maybe not one boat, but many boats, you know, but I didn't. And so continued to run, and the boat ran, and had a lot of nice trips on there. Well, I remember one time I took my grandmother and grandfather on a trip on that boat. I drove them over to Birmingham from Memphis. That's where their home was. And my grandfather was a little Spanish guy. He was like barely 5 feet tall and roly-poly, and been in this country like at least 50-something years, and still talked with a Spanish accent. And everybody called him Little Bit. And then my grandmother, we all called her Annie. You know, that's what she wanted. She didn't want to be called grandmother. So we called her Annie. But my grandfather called her Doll Baby. So she was a big, heavy girl. And he loved it. He loved big. We used to drive down the streets when I was a kid. He'd see a big, heavy girl, and he'd say, "Boy," he says, "look at the butt on that." But that was my granddad. So it was one of the highlights of me owning this company. I got to take my granddad over to Houston, took him out to my house, my grandmother, and then they took the trip back to Birmingport, and then I drove them back in the car back to their home. So that was nice. So I continued to operate the boat, but the boat was still wasn't making any money, and it was going further and further in debt, and I was having a harder time to make my bills. Matter of fact, some of them I'd have to pay on my American Express card to keep the boat going, buying fuel and stuff like that. And then, of course, I guess one of the things that really put me out of business was the clutch. I had a Lufkin clutch. Nobody's ever heard of Lufkin. That's a big company. It makes gears and clutches and things for commercial vessels and commercial equipment, trains and everything else. They made like 4 of these clutches in their history from some brain in some department. And I ended up with one of them on my boat. And it was a big old steel plate that was probably 18, 20, 24 inches around, diameter. And it had cork glued on the darn thing. And it was supposed to, when you hit the clutch, it would compress one plate against another plate, and both of those plates would turn around and keep the boat going, you know, make the propeller turn. Well, it would work for sometimes 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and then the cork would strip off the thing, and I'd have to stop, wait until they shipped me another part. And of course, it was under warranty for quite a long time, but each time I was losing a day's pay because the boat wasn't operating, you know. 2 days' pay sometimes to get the thing fixed. Well, along with everything else, the engine, it was running out of miles. You know, you can only run an engine like this so many hours, and then it's got to be overhauled. So I had to take it into New Orleans and got it overhauled. And
okay, Cap. We'll pick up next issue in next volume when you can finish your story there. That's it for this volume. I hope you come back and watch some more of Captain Harold DeMarrero's River Stories.